Hey guys, so I finally have my Curio machine set up on my desk and hooked up to my computer, and I'm going to work on my first project or attempt my first project, which is just going to be a simple card with some embossing because that's the only tools I have right now. So the first thing I've noticed is I don't have a Curio mat on my screen. This mat that you see right now is for my Cameo. So I expected it to default to the correct mat, but it didn't, but that's fine because I can just go and change it. So I'm going to go to the design page settings and change this. And maybe it's because I have it defaulted to a Cameo mat, but I'm going to go ahead and change it to a Curio mat, which should be on here somewhere. So cut, emboss. I'm going to be embossing. So I'll use the emboss mat, and there you go. You can see the mat change to look more like the Curio base. Now, this is the first time I'm using any of these Curio settings, so this video might be long. I apologize for that in advance. Just, stumble through it with me, guys. So I'm thinking really simple card to test out the tools, and I've read through the instructions, so I think I'm pretty sure this is going to work. So I'm going to go to my design library and I'm going to choose a design with a background and a sentiment. So I have this pattern with the hello. So I'm going to double click it and I'm sure it's going to open huge, which it did. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down. Just so it's easier to work with. And I'm going to go up and rotate this guy around. So let's flip him around 90 degrees. And I want to work with these two things individually. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and ungroup and move the beat to be slightly smaller than the back of a card. So I'm going to make this 5 1/4 by 4. Ooh, wrong way. I forgot I rotated it. So it actually has to be 4 by 5 1/4. I rotated it, but the software doesn't see it that way. So better. Okay, so this is going to be my background. And my hello is going to go on top. But because I'm going to do this out of paper, I'm going to have to make it separate or cut it out on a separate step. So size-wise, this looks pretty good. I'll make it big. So I'm going to set this guy over here because I don't need him right now. Now, this is the image I want to emboss, but I also want it to actually cut out the front panel of the vellum. So I'm going to grab this tool, this rectangle tool, and draw a rectangle around it. And normally I would go through the process of like making sure this is perfectly spaced and lined up, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to have a good enough mindset. So that looks close enough. Now, I want this on the inside to emboss, and I want this on the outside to cut. So I'm going to select this one on the outside and change the line color. And I guess I'll just change it to black, just so it looks different. And now I'm ready to go ahead and send this to the Curio. Now, I will have to go in, though, before I send it and change some settings. Now, remember I said before you would get some, well, I don't know if I said it or not. Once you update your software, you'll get 2 more settings or 2 more menu options. Now, these won't be available until you actually connect a Curio to Silhouette Studio. So if you haven't connected one, you won't be able to see it. That's something I learned the hard way. Well, one of them is emboss and the other one is stipple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this guy here. I'm going to set him as emboss. And you can see it gives directions saying once you place your material face down, it'll be flipped, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. And then this guy, I want him to cut. So I'm going to go to the cut settings. There's a button here, but I'll just go this way. To adjust cut settings. And you can see I have 2 tools here. One of them says emboss, and the other one says textured cardstock. Now, you have 2 options here because you have 2 different tool settings or 2 different tool housing on your machine. So the first one is going to emboss, and the second one is going to cut, and that's this darker line. And you can see it switches between red and blue. So I'm going to go ahead and get my platform loaded and send this to the silhouette. Here is the platform that goes with the Curio, and once you select your material on the screen that you want to cut and emboss, you'll get a little dialog box that shows you your blade depth, and it also shows you where your mats should be or how many mats you should have placed on your platform. Now, the way it's set up is that everything needs to equal 5 millimeters. So you have your actual cutting mat and you have an embossing mat, which I'm actually going to attach on top. And you have 3 other mats, and these are just really spacers. So one says 2, one says 2, and the other one says 1. So in this instance, when I loaded the machine, or excuse me, when I selected the cut settings on my machine, it said that I needed all 3 of these spacers. So I'm going to attach all of these onto the base, and then I'm going to place my embossing mat on top. This little blue tab is a protective liner, so I'm going to go ahead and peel this off. Now in the directions, it does say that you can cut on top of the embossing mat, but it will reduce the life of the embossing mat. So you definitely don't want to cut on top of it when you don't have to. But in this instance, I'm doing something that's embossed and something that's cut. So, and I'm going to have to take the hit this time. So here's the piece of paper that I'm going to be embossing, and this is vellum paper. And I don't think they make this anymore. But if they do, I'll try to find it and link it in the description box for you. Well, this company doesn't make it anymore, but I'm sure other companies make it. Anyways, so this is all attached. So I'm going to go ahead and load this into the Curio and get it all embossed and cut out. Here's my embossed piece, and I embossed actually a piece of vellum for this particular project, or for this first embossing test, just because I knew that even if I didn't get a lot of pressure, it would still show up naturally on vellum, because vellum changes color when you crease it. Now, don't let this appearance on the vellum fool you. It definitely is not as embossed as a manual machine, or I shouldn't say it's not as deep as you would get with a manual machine, such as a Cuttlebug or a Big Shot. However, I didn't really expect it to be. A lot of the results that they're showing online are using the embossing paper that Silhouette specifically makes, which I don't have. Thinking that if I amp up the pressure, I actually might get a little bit deeper results, but overall it's really not bad. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this into a card.